Okay, Charles LeBlanc here. Behind me is a legislator. Usually I would sit down and, on a picnic table and then do the chat, but it's too much wind. I'm not CBC or CTV or whatever. I'm not the mainstream media. Cheap. Okay, got the camera. Focus. An issue came up, spraying. Everybody knows about spraying in New Brunswick. We know, bottom line, spraying is not good, or it's cause more harm than good, but big industries and spraying, they need to get those trees. I don't know. I'm not educated. Like most New Brunswickers, I would say 85% are not educated on this issue. I need to be educated. Hello.
Hello.
Comment ça va? Come on in. Look. That's not bad.
That's good.
And what's your name?
Jerry Redmond.
Jerry Redmond. And you're from?
I'm from Keswick Ridge. I'm a retired wildlife biologist and executive director of the Forestry College at the top of Regent Street.
What's that?
It's a technical college. It's a 2-year program that teaches students about natural resources so that they can go out and manage and help to manage the resources of this province, Maritime provinces, and elsewhere around the country.
2-year program. Who pays for that?
It's a college that's funded in a variety of ways, but probably more than half of the costs are borne by the taxpayers of New Brunswick, or New Brunswick and other provinces as well.
What is it called again?
It's called the Maritime College of Forest Technology.
And it's been existent again. My ADHD today there is flying all over the place. How long?
1946 it got started as the Maritime Forest Ranger School just after the war. They were looking for trained people to work in the woods, and of course New Brunswick was prime for timber and prime for forestry, and they didn't have well-trained people to do the work that needed to be done. So it started as a small little college down in the exhibition grounds after the war. Some of the old barracks and things were used, and then they moved up to the top of the hill and built a college up there for many years. And then eventually, when the Hugh John Fleming Forestry Complex was built, then they took down the old college because it was on that property and integrated the Maritime College of Forest Technology there.
How many people worked there?
Well, that's a good question. The whole complex, there'd be hundreds, but as far as the college itself, it's a relatively small college with support staff. Here, probably about 20 to 25 people. And then we have a Bathurst campus as well, French campus up in Bathurst, and there'd be another 7 or 8 people working up there. Are
you political people?
Oh, we're just biologists and teachers.
Just go in the woods and look for budworms?
No, not so much. It's more to train these folks on how to do that. How to go out and properly sample resources, how to fly aerial surveys so you can count
aerial surveys.
Yeah, like moose surveys.
Aerial surveys.
Duck surveys.
Sorry about that. Can they look at the clear cutting?
Oh, you can do anything with in the air. But what
drone now.
Yeah, that's right. You can, but there's lots of different strategies that you have to follow in order to do it scientifically, and so that the results are reproducible, and you can use that information to make decisions.
Okay, make decisions. What kind of decisions are we talking about? Decision with who?
Well, normally our students are hired by a broad array of different companies,
Mr. Irving,
including the forest industry. So all the different forest
How many
industry
is there
players.
in New Brunswick?
How many what?
Forest industry, different companies in New Brunswick.
There's probably half a dozen anyway, or so.
Okay.
But depending on the size and so forth of them. But the college itself was built for the Maritimes. It was called the Maritime Forest Ranger School.
That's right.
So it was supported by Prince Edward Island and Nova Scotia and New Brunswick, and with the whole idea of getting well-trained natural resource technicians available so that they can work in these resource industries that are very important for the economic output of the provinces, which is fair game. But now, over time, there's been a lot of more diversity of our students are going into other things like fish and wildlife, like urban forestry, other places like Parks Canada. So it's not as tightly knit to the forest industry anymore, whereas at one time when it first started, that was its reason for being.
How long you were there? How long you been there?
I was there since September 2000. I started off as an instructor. Prior to that, I was a big game manager and biologist for the province of New Brunswick for 13 years. So I looked after moose and deer and bears and fur bears.
You just came out.
Well, you know, the whole idea of you know, going to the college is I could bring that experience to the young people that were there and help to train them, rather than just being an academic who's never worked out in the real world.
You know Roger? Sorry, you know Roger from Rosaville? Roger LeBlanc, is it?
Probably heard of
He's been there in the woods for about, he's 60 years old, and he educates for the clear cutting. He's very, very concerned. You know what I'm talking about?
I'm not exactly sure.
Sorry.
No. But anyway, so that's.
I had ADHD jump all over the place.
That's what we're all about, is to train people for, you know, upcoming, current.
Do you have any influence with these people be inside of there?
Not any more than anybody else. I'm not connected.
You mean I have more?
You probably do. Yeah, you probably do. Yes.
Okay, so long story short, now we're trying to explain what's going on. And you were at the college, been there since the year 2000. Everything's fine. You give your survey, the forest. Just, by the way, can I ask you how much this job pays?
It varies. You know, when I was an instructor, it was in the neighborhood of about 80,000 a year.
Good money.
And when I was director, it was about 100.
Good money. So there you are. And is that a bureaucratic job?
No, it's not. It's just a job that is through the college itself. So it's like any other, you know, organization.
But you're in Fredericton.
Yeah.
And in Fredericton, to have a high position like that for forestry, $80,000, good money. Are you married?
I was.
You was. Okay. Okay. Sorry. We're crossing that line again. The only reason I asked is what we're going to talk about. Right. You know what the other half, what she had to say. Maybe that's why you got a divorce. You open your mouth too much. Charlie, focus.
Yeah. That's
okay. Right. So. What's your name again? Bob?
Jerry.
Say that.
Bob,
Jerry.
Call me anything you want, but don't forget to call me for supper.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, now you turn around. As a bureaucrat, you're supposed to keep your... Is that the idiot mayor, Michael Bryan, walking there? Now, say, focus, sure. Okay, so anyway, turn around. Let's do a holler. Okay. You turn around, you're supposed to keep your mouth shut, and you did it. You said that you were concerned about, and I think you supported a worker,
Rod
Cumberland. He spoke up against spraying, very outspoken guy, and then they tried to picture him as other issue, try to deflect from the spraying. Yeah, and then you were let go. Why?
Well, it's I actually retired as the director in 2017, so I went back to my Christmas tree farm and was enjoying a nice quiet retirement, and then Rod showed up at my door one morning a couple of weeks ago with this letter of termination from the college.
Why?
So, well, that's a good question. But so he showed me the letter, and I took a copy of it, and I said, well, let's talk a little bit more about this after I have a chance to review it, and from there I decided that I was going to help Rod to get reinstated back into the college.
How long he's been there?
He's been there since 2012. Prior to that, he was the...
Was he a student of yours, or...?
No, he was a colleague of mine who worked with me in natural resources. I hired him as the deer biologist for the province of New Brunswick when I was the big game manager back a ways, and then since then I encouraged him to join me at the college because I wanted him to take over the fish and wildlife courses at the college because of his great background and experience and expertise. So I knew him, you know, professionally for a long time, and I knew his work, I knew his work ethic, and I knew the quality of.
How was he? Was he doing a good job?
He's doing an excellent job.
Doing an excellent job.
So anyway, well, during my time as director, I was pressured by the board, both directly and indirectly, to try to keep Rod sanctioned from speaking out on
Does he
this.
have ADHD?
Who?
Rob?
Rod?
Rod, does he have ADHD? Like you can't shut him up. He has opinions. Is he Scottish? Is he, I'm trying to
I don't know.
say, is he like me? You can't section people like me. You gotta put a bullet between the eyebrows.
No, I don't know.
I hear
what
this
his,
guy is
I don't
very
know.
outspoken.
He's outspoken, but he's also a really good researcher. He just likes to be able to do his research and to let people know. And his whole reason for doing and being outspoken is because he sees the negative impact of glyphosate spraying on our deer herd and other wildlife.
He sees it.
Well, he sees it.
And people say like climate change, you got to go by scientific fact, and this is a fact.
Well, he's got the research to help to support his claim that the deer and other wildlife are being negatively affected by spray in this province. So yeah, he's got facts, and I know that he always based on facts.
And you agree with that?
I agree with his facts. I agree that he is, and he has the right to be able to speak out as a teacher.
But is he a bureaucrat? Gotta keep his mouth shut?
No, he's a teacher, and
he'd be
like a university.
Charlie, shut up. Let him talk.
Not really, because he should have academic freedom because he teaches at a college. What he wants to do, if you were a student there, is to show you both sides of the story, not just one side. And the forest industry have their side of the story, and others have their side of the story. And all that he was doing as a teacher was to ensure that those students had balanced information for them to go forward and decide for themselves.
What's wrong with that?
Nothing wrong with that. So he got fired.
Why?
Well, if you read the
Irving media?
Oh, I have no idea. But
you read the Irving media?
Well, they don't put anything in it that's worth reading.
Okay, let's focus again. Okay, so
anyway, yeah. So that's all I'm doing is trying to support a friend and colleague who I think is getting railroaded.
And you got fired too.
And I got fired too. Well, I was just doing some part-time work for the continuing education, but it was my course anyway to start with.
And that's and you have an ego.
Well, I don't have as big as ego as you.
Oh, I have
at least
very big here, but that's okay.
But I just think it was.
Feeling.
Yeah, it hurt my feelings, but at the same time, it didn't surprise me because of the nature of what was going on with Rod. So I half expected it to happen. But irrespective of that, I think people got to stand up for the people that are doing the right thing. And many people get pushed around, and they don't have a support network like we have for.
How long? Where were you born?
I was born in Truro, Nova Scotia.
How long have you been here in New Brunswick?
A long time now. I've been here. I went to university here, and that was back in the 70s.
Okay, 70s.
And so, say the 70s, I've been here pretty well steady, except for a couple of jaunts in Ontario and Newfoundland.
What are you, some kind of a nut?
I'm a nut like you.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, no, we got to be nut to do what we're doing. What I'm getting at is you say it'd be nice to have New Brunswickers support. New Brunswickers don't do nothing. They just, where have you been? Maybe go start classes.
Well, what I'm saying is more of a support network because a lot of people know Rod because he has been outspoken. And
they'll support him on Facebook. Hey, read my Facebook. They're going against one way. They turn around and say, well, here's my Facebook. There's my opinion. This is not right. Okay, hey, there's going to be a protest at the legislature to support Rod. Come on, let's go. Oh, no. I smoke too much marijuana. The sun hurts my eyes. But read my Facebook. It's on my Facebook. Am I right or am I wrong?
Well, that's probably part of it, but you also need that in order to get and spread the word because the mainstream media are not spreading the story. They're not investigating the story. And unfortunately, I don't know the reason for that directly, but I do think that we need to be able to discuss these issues in an open and non-intimidating environment. We can't be having to keep your mouth shut because somebody might get offended who might have control over you or someone you know.
How much Rob was making a year?
I don't know.
No, but that's same thing. But if you open your mouth, you lose your job.
Well,
and then the wife leaves you after. But anyway, sorry. But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the bureaucrat.
Right.
Keep your mouth shut. Yeah. Sergeant Schultz, I see nothing, I say nothing, I hear nothing. Right. You open your mouth, you're fired. So, we should be concerned. A guy like Rod, where is he now anyway?
Well, he's I think he's in the area. He was out west just last week because he does a lot of timber sports, you know, lumberjack things.
He does?
So he's a big lumberjack guy.
So I can't agitate him like I'm agitating you. He
that's
might grab me right by the neck.
Yeah. He's always carrying an axe around with him. But, but he doesn't have an axe to grind. How's that?
That's good. But the bottom line, okay, let's see this here. 16 minutes. How many people do you think are still listening to this?
Is this live?
Oh yeah, no, it's not live, but there's no. I'm not high tech. This is just a little camera. We just put it on Facebook, Twitter, and blog, and then.
But he's working now with his with his legal team to see what the next steps are, and you'll have to talk to him to get that information. But at the same time, I'm working hard on the Facebook page. We're seeing lots and lots of people coming out in support of him in various ways.
Facebook. Yes, Facebook.
But if we can generate enough concern, and we're planning to hold a rally for him at some point in the not too distant future, then maybe this will turn the tide, and maybe it'll start to get New Brunswickers more involved in some of the things that they should be concerned about, and certainly pressuring people who are just doing their jobs is very wrong.
And spraying is a problem.
Spraying is an issue that is a big issue right across North America, and I think it has the potential to be, at least with the spray glyphosate, to be very similar to our experience when we went through the whole DDT issue. DDT, no, that was the insecticide they sprayed to kill all kinds of insects, and it did a really good job. It softened the eggs of birds so that they couldn't reproduce, and particularly those birds that were high in the food chain.
Okay.
So DDT was a big issue way back in the 70s, 60s even, and eventually they banned it for use in North America. Very effective, but it had too many unintended consequences. It had too many impacts on animals that were unacceptable. And I think you're going to see that glyphosate or Roundup or Vision or whatever you want to call the active ingredient and the surfactants that go in it are going to have a very similar fate. We're already seeing human cases of lymphoma cancers that have been directly linked to this herbicide.
Why is this so important to spray anyway? They didn't spray 75 years ago.
Well, it's very cost effective to spray. Back 75 years ago, they didn't spray because they didn't have those tools in their toolbox. But spray saves a lot of money because you don't have to put people on the ground. So it takes away from that human component, and they can kill the plants that they want to kill and allow the ones that they want to grow.
And in the old days, it would bring people. What's it called again? Oh yeah,
workers.
Jobs. Workers, and we can't have that anymore in the capitalist system. More techniques of spraying and clear cutting with the machine. Only two person works there.
Well, they would call it efficiencies, but at the same time, there's nothing wrong with efficiencies, but when you recognize that a chemical that's being sprayed has all these unintended consequences, then you better make sure that those are taken care of, because if you don't, then your company is going to have some unintended consequences too, because you're going to be responsible for a lot of those things that go wrong when that chemical is proven to be a known carcinogen or has some other impacts on our wildlife.
Right quick, what are you guys' views on clear cutting?
Well, I'm not speaking for Rod at all.
I'm talking about you. Don't you have a brain for yourself?
You said you're you guys.
That means you pay attention.
You said you guys.
Excuse me, sir. I apologize. What's your opinion on clear cutting?
My opinion on clear cutting is that it is a problem. There's a place for clear cutting in small areas and under conditions of certain tree species. It fits as a good way of extracting,
but not the
timber.
way they're doing it now.
The way things are done now, I think there's better ways. I think we have the forestry techniques, the knowledge of how trees reproduce, much better today. The silviculture, what we call silviculture, is much better today, and our knowledge is so much better today that we don't really have to rely on clear cutting to grow our forests and grow healthy forests. And the other thing is the long-term effects of clear cutting are that you are still creating these one type of forests that are vulnerable to other problems like insects and pests and disease and fire that they're already seeing out west, where by taking away the hardwoods out of the forest, those acted as natural buffers to when wildfires went through.
Yeah.
So they could slow down the fire. Now you get these fires going and they're really, really hard to control even under the best scenarios. So I think there's a lot of unintended consequences of using any tool or technique that you've got to factor in if you're going to grow healthy forests.
You look now, those dirt roads, you used to see a log truck come out of the dirt road. Now those dirt roads are like super dirt highway.
Yeah.
In better shape than our secondary road here in New Brunswick.
Better shape than the Keswick Ridge Road up in
big
Keswick
time.
Ridge.
You know, I walked to Mactaquac Dam, and I went around last week.
Did you?
And then, it was a nice one. Okay, focus, Charles. 11 out, 12.
Anyway, I got to fill in.
Oh yeah, the meter. Now
here.
the bottom line is, and the clear cutting, I was going somewhere right. See, you just distracted me. The clear cutting, the bottom line, our forests, we need people like you and like Rob to speak up and shouldn't be afraid to speak up. No consequences, or put a sign over your head and say union, and then you got protection.
I think it's just got to stop the bullying and intimidation of good people, and I think a lot of good people in government and elsewhere have been intimidated, and you know, Rod's not going to put up with that. I'm certainly not going to put up with it, and you know, I'm going to support Rod until he gets exonerated from this whole mess.
Is Irving playing a role in this?
I have no idea.
That's a political answer.
Well, it's true too. I don't know.
Okay, Brunswick. Okay.
Yeah.
So, okay.
All right. Good to meet you.
Merci beaucoup.
Okay.
Go get your parking meter.
Yeah.
Good luck, Jerry.
Yeah, we'll talk to you
What's your last name, Jerry?
Redmond.
Huh?
Redmond.
Redmond? Oh, that's right, Redmond. Thank you. Oh, and by the way, you're happy with that?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's what's going on. Yeah, about the spraying in New Brunswick. I'm sorry, this wasn't planned. I just seen him at the news conference, the anti-spray news conference, and the buddy Rod, and maybe I'll talk to him in the future. But the bottom line, New Brunswickers, we have to wake up and really, really look out their way that they're spraying our forests, and people like that should be allowed to speak up without being fired. That's the bottom line here. Yeah, not fair. Good fella, and very, very educated.